Welcome to the Brooklyn Historical Society, where the vibrant history of Brooklyn is made tangible, meaningful, and relevant today. These videos feature inspirational highlights and excerpts from our teaching and learning materials. To find more resources about the history of Brooklyn, visit us online at www.brooklynhistory.org. This is the second video in a three-part series on one of Brooklyn's and the world's most iconic historical landmarks, the Brooklyn Bridge. Originally designed by engineer John Roebling and eventually completed by his eldest son Washington with essential assistance from Washington's wife Emily, construction of the Brooklyn Bridge began in 1869. Despite the magnificence of the project, the story of the Brooklyn Bridge's construction actually began with a tragic loss. Prior to construction, John Roebling was standing on a dock along the East River with Washington, surveying the area where his bridge would stand, when his foot was crushed by a docking ferry. Washington carried his father home and summoned a doctor. Choosing an alternate and insufficient treatment that involved using unsterilized water to treat the wound, John quickly developed an infection that spread throughout his body and caused lockjaw. John died about a month later. Before dying, he asked his son Washington to take over as chief engineer of the Brooklyn Bridge and to ensure the bridge's completion. To begin building the bridge, Washington and his team needed to make sure the towers, which would hold the cabling, would be sturdy. It was decided to use an architectural element called a caisson. Caissons are essentially big, watertight boxes on top of which the towers of the bridge sit, providing stabilization for the bridge structure. Builders use pneumatic caissons, which are bottomless wooden boxes filled with compressed air. In March 1870, workers floated the first caisson to the location of the Brooklyn Tower in the East River and sunk it. Once it reached the bottom of the river, the workers went down into the caisson using a tube. Once inside the caisson itself, these workers dug up rocks and boulders from the riverbed so the caisson would sink deeper into the mud and become more stable. The rocks and boulders were then sent up the tube to the surface. Because the air pressure was different in the caisson than above the water's surface, workers would get sick if they went down or came up too quickly. The rapid pressure change would make the air in their bodies expand too fast. This condition is called the bends, or caissons disease. It makes a person feel dizzy or nauseous and can cause headaches or even paralysis. Unfortunately, Washington Roebling himself suffered from caissons disease while working on the bridge. In January 1870, he became bedridden and was unable to go to the job site. His wife, Emily Roebling, took over the day-to-day project management, ferrying information between Washington and the workers at the bridge job site. In recognition of the central role she played in the bridge's construction, Emily Roebling's name was later added as an engineer of the Brooklyn Bridge. As some workers dug under the caisson, other workers began building the towers on top. The weight of these towers helped the caisson sink deeper until they reached the bedrock under the river. Caissons were completed in 1875, and both towers followed in 1876. It's not surprising that these initial stages took 6 years to complete, as the caissons and the bricks for the towers were made by hand using simple tools. As the caissons and towers were being built, space was needed on both the Brooklyn and New York sides for the anchorage that would hold the bridge in place. Between February 1873 and June 1875, the Brooklyn anchorage was completed, a process that involved the demolition of many buildings on the East River waterfront, an area that was the site of an early town for free African Americans. Between May 1875 and July 1876, the New York anchorage was completed. Just as with the Brooklyn side, this involved the destruction of buildings on New York's waterfront, including George Washington's presidential mansion. With this completion, the bridge foundation was finished and it was time to add the cables. The Brooklyn Bridge was the first suspension bridge to use steel cables. Just like the other parts of the bridge, the J.A. Roebling Sons Company handcrafted these steel cables. First, the cables were laid over the towers using a traveler rope to string the wire, and were then tested by workers to ensure their strength. After testing, each cable was wrapped with wire to further strengthen it and to protect it from the weather. The cables were then attached to anchor plates on both sides of the bridge that weighed 23 tons. This was an advance in the history of bridge engineering, as earlier suspension bridge projects were known to collapse because the cabling was not strong enough to support the bridge. Each individual cable for the Brooklyn Bridge was made from a bundle of 19 parallel strands of extremely strong steel wires that were then wrapped with more steel wire. Each parallel strand in this bundle consisted of 278 individual wires, each 1/8 of an inch thick. With the additional wire wrapping, each finished cable had a total of 6,289 individual wires. After the cabling was finished, a roadway for carts, tracks for cable cars, and a pedestrian walkway were built to complete the bridge. Throughout this project, the workforce was made up of a large number of immigrant laborers, most of whom were Irish and German. Despite the difficulty of the work and the number of men who either quit or left the job due to illness, injury, or death, the constant flow of immigrants to the U.S. ensured a steady labor pool. Building the bridge was both difficult and dangerous. Electricity had not yet been invented during the time of construction, so all of the work was done without power tools or electric light. Though no official records were kept, it is estimated that 20 to 30 men died over the course of the project. In addition to costing the lives of these workers, the bridge's construction cost approximately $15 million at the time. After 14 long years of construction, the Brooklyn Bridge was finally completed in 1883 and opened for transit. Thanks to the determination and ingenuity of the Roebling family and thousands of excavators, masons, stonecutters, mechanics, foremen, engineers, and day laborers, Brooklyn and New York now have a physical connection that has helped both places to thrive and has attracted people to both sides of the bridge to live, work, and play. For more information about how the Brooklyn Bridge was built, check out our Brooklyn Bridge curriculum kit in the Teaching Resources section of our website, www.brooklynhistory.org.